Hello, welcome to the Advisory Deck, out on location here in Victoria Park in Adelaide. Conversations for business leaders and business owners. I'm joined by James McGill from Chatham Capital. How are you, James?
Hello, Troy. I'm good, thank you.
Good to hear. As you know, we talk about all kinds of concepts and topics and challenges that business leaders face. And one of the ones we thought was worth unpacking and perhaps bringing a couple of expert commentators in on in this unbelievably strange, challenging and unusual year is the 3 a.m. fears and worries of leaders. Those things that business owners, business leaders, professionals of all types find themselves at 3 a.m. in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about, feeling quite stressed and or anxious about as well, and what they are, and maybe some thoughts on how to allay some of those sort of fears as well. James, I know as a business owner, look, there's always stress, there's always fear, there's always challenges and worries. I think 2020 in so many ways has exacerbated that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this would have to be, I think, the toughest year in the last 10, 20, and it's unrelenting. I was having a conversation last night with some accountants and business owners, and they spoke about the GFC as being tough, but it was survivable. Go back 10 years before that, you go to the early 2000s, there was a lot of a tech crunch that hit a number of companies in the tech, as that tech boom started, but it was quite sector specific. You go back 10 years before that to the stock market crash, and if you had shares in the stock market at that point in time, it hit you really hard for a lot of people, but a lot of the community wasn't directly impacted. And this is something now, because of COVID, that is impacting just about every single person, from kids at school through to university students, through to retirees, and it's not just in one country or one demographic or one geographic, it's around the world, and I think that makes it a little bit harder. So we're having more and more conversations with people who are going, they're just feeling flat. They're just feeling down, even though their business, if you're lucky enough to be somewhere like an Adelaide or maybe Brisbane or Perth, where things are relatively normal now, people are still exhausted, right? And if you're sitting there by yourself feeling exhausted, that's a really, really challenging place to be. It's hard to get yourself up and going. It's hard to get yourself focused if you're the one having to, carrying the weight of expectations of your team, and you're trying to go, well, we've lost revenue, I've had to stand a couple of people down, some of our customers aren't travelling very well, I've got to pay the bills, I don't want to put my staff under pressure. And that can be a lonely, challenging place to be, and the challenge, I think, for many people, and our poor brothers and sisters in Victoria are feeling this more than anywhere else, there's not a particular end date in sight. So we think we're going to be okay in Adelaide or Sydney or Brisbane, but a second wave can come. So there's this feeling of it's not drowning, waving kind of thing, right? And I think it's a place where people just need to be conscious that A, you're not there by yourself, but B, what's your plan to survive? What's your plan to sustain yourself through that? And I think that's where conversations with the right people can be really, really beneficial, and we don't do it enough, I think, in the workplace. Schools are getting better at it. Right? Anyone who's got kids going through school, they talk about resilience now, and that was a word that 10 years ago probably wasn't spoken of a lot. Now it's a regular thing. A lot of kids, I think, if you're in that safe cocoon environment where your family looks after you and the school looks after you, resilience has a meaning and a purpose. It's quite different if you're a 23-year-old living out of home, trying to pay the bills, being stood down from your job, and you're trying to struggle to figure out how you make things go ahead, or you're a company owner at 40, 50, whatever you might be, and your business has been taken out from underneath you. That's a different environment. But geez, I think messaging here is speak to people who can help, because you are not alone. Every business, I would think, every small business owner is struggling with issues you would normally have to struggle with.
Look, and I think, the interesting point here is that in a year where pretty much everyone is feeling some level of wrong-footedness, not quite sure, and that brings about stress and anxiety, exacerbated when you're a leader responsible for the long-term and short-term future of a business, of a team of people, of staff, and you're having to think both at 3 a.m. tactically, can we get JobKeeper next month? How are we going to make sure that we can put food on the table? Are our businesses going to continue to trade, in some way that can keep the lights on? You also have to think strategically. You know, in the midst of all this disruption, there's, you know, continued change in competitive forces in the way technology is challenging and changing our industry. So I have to keep one eye on keeping the lights on, keep one eye on thinking, is this business going to be sustainable 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the track and profitable, and what's going to be required of me and my team to do that as well. And the third piece in all of that is, am I going to survive? Am I going to be able to get out of bed and not curl up in a fetal position in the morning? Because a lot is on my shoulders. And I think, again, you know, whether your fears are around, you know, key person risk in a business and losing that, whether it's around technological disruption challenges to your marketplace, sustainability of your market, regulation, ability to trade locally or internationally, all of these kind of fears are things that just will grow in your head if you don't find a way to talk to somebody about them. So whether that's, you know, colleagues, whether that's partners, whether that's professional people as well, both to look after yourself, but also to think smartly. We talked in an earlier episode, James, about a person who we've been doing some advisory support work with, and just the ability to articulate what you're worried about, what you're fearful of. That's part of the solution, right? That conversation.
It is. There's an old adage, you know, a problem shared is a problem halved. And I think that's when you're so caught up in trying to figure out how do you pay that bill, keep that staff member on, how do you pay for the services you need if your business revenue is being cut in half. Sometimes it can feel like a pretty dark and lonely place, and a different view might just help you figure out a way forward. And I think that's, you know, and again, I know that's challenging when you're going, well, I can't pay the bills I need to pay now. How am I going to pay someone else? I think the messaging here is it doesn't have to be a paid advisor. I think there are both free services, but also chances are you've got friends or family who are going through the same thing. And you know, I shouldn't say males in particular they're bad at sharing, because I think that's a bit oversimplifying and being a bit gender specific. But a lot of us are not great at sharing something, and I think if you sit down with a friend and go, you know what, I'm really struggling with this from a business perspective at the moment, you find the right person, and if you know your friends, you know the right person to go and have a chat with. They go, you know, do you have any ideas how I could move forward with that? And I think sometimes just that talking means that you get the problem out there, and you might get a solution from it that makes you mean you can go back to the office and say, right, now I can fix that. You might just feel better that you've actually spoken about it, right? And I think that's the messaging here. We can talk to a couple of experts in a moment and say, what are some specific things you could do? But what I think our messaging really is, don't sit back in the office and go, I've got to take it all on by myself and fix it by myself, because you know, no successful business is built in the good times by themselves, and they're certainly not built in the tough times by themselves.
I mean, the 3 a.m. ceiling is no stranger to any leader of business this year, magnified to some degree. So we thought we'd ask for the thoughts and opinions and expert perspectives of a couple of people that we think can add some value to this conversation. Let's throw to them now.
Hi there, I'm Amanda from Agile Mind. I'm going to be talking to you about why mindfulness is an essential skill for us to have in modern day life. We're all really busy. Our lives are getting busier and busier. Mindfulness and meditation are a way of creating some space, bringing ourselves back into that natural state of balance, which is where our bodies do well, where they recover, where they recuperate, and where we hardly ever let our bodies go. We always feel like there's more to be done and we have to keep moving and pushing. So the practice of mindfulness is helping us to recognize when we're becoming out of balance, stressed, and bringing ourselves back into that lovely state where we can get back into the flow. What is mindfulness? Well, the definition is it's paying attention to what's happening in the moment without judgment. And those two words are really important, without judgment. Because mostly we're attaching a story to something. This isn't how it should be. I don't want it to be like that. Isn't that, you know, we're having a conversation about all of our experiences without actually just having the experience. It takes a little bit of practice to bring this in, but once you start practicing it, you can be doing it really at any time throughout the day. For example, you might be having a sip of your coffee in the morning. Mostly, you know, we might be texting, drinking, sending an email, really not experiencing any of those things fully. And the practice of mindfulness would be to slow down, to really notice what it feels like to have that sensation of the coffee in your hand, the smell of the coffee, the first taste of the coffee, the sensation of the coffee, maybe noticing how that makes your body feel. It's really just bringing a different type of attention to those really simple things that we do every day. So really quickly, I guess the shortcut, if I can define it in any way, is when we want to connect with mindfulness and come back into a state of natural balance, the quickest and easiest way to do that is by connecting to any of our senses. So taking a moment to notice what we can hear, taking a moment perhaps to notice the contact of your feet with the floor, the body connecting with the chair, the clothes touching your skin. You might like to connect with a sense of touch. Connecting with any of those senses will mean that you're shifting from thinking and going around and around in this sort of hamster wheel of thoughts in your head to the direct experience of your senses. So I invite you to try that really quick and simple exercise. Another technique that people find useful is having an anchor. So a place where they can come back to when they notice that they're stuck in some sort of cyclic thinking or they're feeling stressed or anxious. For some people, it's noticing the sensation of breath coming in at your nose and out again, or the expansion of your chest, rising and falling as you breathe. And just simply noticing it, and bringing yourself back into the moment and to that experience. So if you'd like to know more about mindfulness or meditation, please reach out, and good luck with your mindfulness experiments. Thanks. See you.
Hi everybody, and thank you for having me as a guest on the advisory deck to Troy and James. I'm a coaching consultant and my name is Lee Morrison. I work with a variety of businesses and people on how to be the change they wish to see. And a lot of the work that I do is actually a recalibration process. It could be around systems and processes, shifts in teams, but basically it all boils down to the energy of the people involved. So I work a lot on how to optimally calibrate it towards high performance that lasts. And so well-being is such a sweet spot for me. So for most of us, the impact of COVID has been huge. Whether you're a business that's thriving or struggling, it's actually quite rare at the moment to find people or businesses who are kind of in the middle or unaffected. And at both ends of these extremes, people's well-being is really being affected. So the mantra I have been preaching all year has been, never let a crisis go by without taking the time to learn the lessons from it. And this is for any crisis, not just COVID. So take these opportunities of crisis moments to reset. It's a time to reevaluate what is working and what potentially isn't, and take accountability for that change. Use the lessons to shift and do better. So some of the shifts I'd recommend when it comes to resetting your well-being specifically are 4 key areas I'm going to go through shortly. So business owners really are at high risk for poor well-being and not looking after themselves. There's plenty of things to keep you up at night. The performance of the team, your cash flow, your client and their level of satisfaction, the quality of your products, the relationships you're making, not having enough hours in the day, the balance of work and personal time, and commitments you might have to family and friends. The list just goes on and on. So my first advice is always fit your oxygen mask first. Just like the safety plans on a plane, you are not useful to anyone when you are run ragged and exhausted. You start to make poor decisions, your productivity is low, you may become more emotionally sensitive, and often we looked for shortcuts. So the 4 ways that I can suggest you start to manage your well-being better are: number 1, know what is actually important to you. Define and live by your values. You can start to use your values as a compass for the choices you would like to make. Knowing your values is the first exercise I always do with all business owners. It helps to reshape how you manage your time, how you show up as your best self, not just to customers and people externally, but internally to yourself, so you're not self-sabotaging, but also to the people that you know and love best. Number 2, get the foundations right. So the 4 key foundations are movement, hydration, sleep, and the fuel. So science and evidence all back this in every single wellbeing study. So there's evidence on the importance of quality sleep. Try to get 7 hours a night, but actually before you start to have those 7 hours, value rest and recovery time. Some of us don't do that. Build moments of movement into your day, and there's a variety of ways you can do it. Take walking meetings, use the stairs, get up and stretch your body between meetings. Number 3 in the foundations is water. Make sure that you're getting enough water. It carries the nutrients and oxygen to your brain and your body that help you make effective decisions. Buy a 2-litre jug and just sit it there on your desk as a bit of a reminder throughout the day to refill it. And really consider what you're putting into your body as the fuel for your system. So go for balance. Think of foods that release energy over time rather than quick hits of sugar in the afternoon. Number 3 is about managing your energy effectively. And that's about sort of emotional energy and being aware of what you can and what you can't control. And there's ultimately 3 things that you can control. Number 1 is how you respond to a situation. Number 2 is how you show up at work. Are you sluggish and tired and can't be bothered? Or are you showing up consistently, wanting to give it your best and have the best possible outcome or output? And number 3 is about taking responsibility for the energy you bring to the situation, which is a build on number 2, like who are you being in any situation? And everything in life, pretty much away from those 3 things, is outside of your control. So if you can start to master how you respond, how you show up, and how you take responsibility for your energy, they will have a significant difference on how people are around you. And my last and final tip, number 4, is a build on the previous one. It's really about understanding that uncertainty is the only certainty. So rather than thinking of it as a wafty idea about uncertainty, you can actually plan around it. So look for how you can not react to situations, but rather respond. So your first response could be, when things don't go the way you were planning them, is how can this actually work for us? Don't just jump to this is doom and gloom and the drama and the energy and the emotions that come with that. Build buffer time into your day for unexpected tasks and conversation, and I would even say at least an hour. And if you get this time gifted back to yourself, use it really wisely to do something that really benefits you. So hopefully these 4 tips have been really useful for you. Apply them with your team as well, and take care of yourself. All the best, and always remember to try and fit your oxygen mask first.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing those insights with us. James, as we kind of close up this conversation on, the 3 a.m. fears and worries and scary things that are keeping a lot of leaders awake at night in 2020 as they consider surviving 2020 and keeping the business on a positive track. Final thoughts from you?
Get your problems out there. I think no matter what they are, find a team, get them around. I mean, we have the Swarm, the group we talk about. That's 20 plus individuals, consultants, others, and we often come together and have a chat. And often those conversations are about how hard business is. We had one the other day. A lot of it was around COVID impact, and it was just a chance to come and talk without being judged, without necessarily saying what solution have you got for me. So I'd say find your Swarm, find your team around you. People you can work with and trust, have a regular conversation with, check in, and don't bury those problems deep inside, no matter what they are, because that's not going to be the way for you to get forward.
Be conscious of a couple of things, the very human aspect and looking after yourself, putting the seatbelt on yourself in the plane, not that there's many people in planes at the moment, but before you put it on the kids. Yeah, that's right. And then the second part is the business. And I think, again, while 5 to 10 year strategic plans as we knew them are potentially very, very different moving forward, having some counsel and support and some advice to help you think through stepwise how this might work longer term has real merit too. So if you want to get in touch and have a conversation with us about that, please come and sit on the advisory deck. We'll come and sit on yours. You can come and sit in Victoria Park with us and have a riff. There's kids running around everywhere, but anyway, working with small animals and children. Get in touch with details down the bottom here. James, as always, thanks for your insights.
Thank you, Troy.
Thanks for joining us on the advisory deck.